This film was inspired by the idea that there really aren't movies about our veterans coming home. There are a few good documentaries, but not many, narrative feature films dealing with this subject matter. I grew up watching movies in the 70s, so films like Taxi Driver and Coming Home, We'll Stop the Rain, Deer Hunter, all hit my consciousness and were a way, I think, for our culture to process, what just happened out of Vietnam. And I feel like all the movies now are about superheroes and people in capes and leotards, and I wanted to make a film that, talked about something real. And if you watch closely, or you may have noticed a few references from Taxi Driver and some of those films, visually, just some particular shots that are really homages in this film to that film.
The shot of the reflection in the water,
Yeah.
did you have that pre-planned or you just stumbled upon it?
I noticed that also. The question was about the water shot that had a lot of motion in it. That's the shot you're talking about? Yeah.
I love that shot because it really kind of gives a sense of her interior state. So no, not at all. That's one of those unbelievable lucky moments you get. That happened on the very first day of shooting, which was just a lot of that walking around stuff in Oakland. That's Lake Merritt is the water. And I didn't shoot the film. Terrifically talented woman named Catherine Goldschmidt was the director of photography, but on that very first day, it was almost just like a get to know Carla, the actor who played Carrie Ann, and just sort of start getting into the character and kind of finding out what we would discover. So we sort of did some second unit shot stuff that I shot, and I saw that image through the viewfinder, and I was, I made her walk past there like, 50 times because it was so striking. It's a pretty stunning shot. It's just a reflection of, a high rise off the water at the right time of day. So how did we get the idea to use the radio to kind of help represent her PTSD, right? So I was determined to not have visual flashbacks in a film about an Iraqi veteran coming home. A lot of people suggested early on as I was talking about the story, you gotta, sort of gauze the lens, and then we're in the desert, and, she's got a helmet on or something. And I was just really determined to avoid that cliche and represent her headspace through sound. I know some great sound people through my, my day job work, and one of my favorite quotes about sound in film is it's the side door to the mind. It's the side door to the viewer's mind. And there's a whole, hopefully you get to see the film again, but there's a whole subtext or subplot, I should say, that's happening in those radio conversations that tells a little bit more about the narrative thread of what happened to Carrie Ann during the war. And as a radio operator, right, her crisis, her trauma happened in sound. And it just seemed fitting to try to work that in. And we had some great sound work from a guy, Andrew Vernon, did the sound design and did a wonderful job sort of creating that tapestry of interior life in her mind.
Your point, what was your thought behind making the lead character a woman returning from war as opposed to a man?
Okay, the question was any ideas behind the lead character being a woman? And I think in a way the idea was why not be a woman and just make it a little different that way. The film uses a lot of conventions in a lot of ways. It's a film noir. A lot of the film noirs from the 40s are about veterans coming home from the war, and that kind of created a crisis sort of culturally too. And those films are trying to work that out. And I thought, well, what's different about this period is that women are coming home from the war with PTSD. More than 10% of our troops are women now, and they're dealing with the same issue. So that was basically the idea. And then that turned into, and someone made the comment the other night, which I really appreciated, was thank God you didn't create a sort of love hookup between her and the bad guy, right? Like that would be the obvious cliche place for that to go. And that was another sort of point early on in the story of resistance. A lot of people suggesting that's what you got to do. That's what people want to see. They want to, they got to take their clothes off at some point. And it just was like, no, that's just because it's a woman lead. That is not what this film is about. Yeah. So I'm really glad I made that choice. So thank you for applauding, because there's a lot of pressure. It's the conventional thing to do, right? Is kind of have it go that way. And I just wanted to avoid that, which feels like a risk when you're making one of these small films. But the flip side of that is why make a small independent film and not be daring or do something different, right? Like save the mainstream, focus group stuff for the multi-million-dollar films. So the question was why Bay Area as a location. So there's a great film community in Northern California. Great actors, great crew. Before I worked at Pixar, I worked at American Zoetrope, which is Francis Coppola's company, which is in a lot of ways the seed of the tradition of maverick Northern California outside of the mainstream Hollywood filmmaking. So I like to imagine that I'm carrying a candle from that torch, right, and carrying on a Bay Area film tradition.
The footage from the Occupy Oakland and the I guess the Tea Party, the Solano,
right?
Was that like guerrilla shot? Was that captured before the movie and then you used it after, or how did that work out?
So the question is about the Occupy and the Tea Party stuff, which was shot during the filmmaking, and we always had the idea that we would try to weave nonfiction moments into the film. The inspiration to that is a film from 1968 called Medium Cool, that's shot during the Democratic Convention. The Tea Party rally didn't quite have the drama of the Chicago Convention. It's more like a picnic. I mean, it's hard to find a Tea Party rally in Northern California. I can't remember. But, they do happen, and we found one. And that one we did have our characters in. The Occupy stuff, was such a flash moment. I just went down there with my camera and got that. And we sort of integrated it on the TV set in her apartment.